Today, we're going to be creating our first brand guide on the Guidelines platform. To do that, we're going to head to guidelines.site. And if you want to follow along for this tutorial, you can do the same thing. Head to guidelines.site and create your account now. Now, once we log in, what we'll see is this screen. It's allowing us to create our first set of brand guidelines. Today, we're going to be using an example brand called Leap. It's a company which we want to design the brand guidelines for, so let's go ahead and click New Guidelines. Now, because my company is called Leap, I might call this the Leap Brand Style Guide. And you can see that there's a subdomain that's available. I'll be able to send my team to leapbrandstyleguide.guidelines.site. If I want to, I could add a domain that we own to use that for my style guide to get a really branded experience. That's the first step of creating a set of guidelines. Next, we're going to add a brand. Now, we might use an existing brand, or we could create a new one. For this one, we're going to create a new one, so let's go ahead and click Next. If I click Next, it'll give me the opportunity to create a new brand. I could, of course, go up to the Brands tab and create it there, but let's go ahead and create one right here instead. Now, when we create a new brand, there's a number of elements which come into it. I don't have to fill in everything now, but the more I fill in, the more styled my brand guidelines website will be. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a few logos. Vector formats are always better than raster formats, so I'm going to use an SVG file for these. You can see here that I've got a number of different SVGs for my brand. I'm going to upload them all and just let Guidelines arrange them for me. Now, it's going to pull out some important information like the colors and the names, and it's going to give me a chance to add those colors in a second just down here. Before I do though, I might just want to rearrange these to my liking. So I'm going to put our main logo first. You can see that I've also got an icon and a word mark. So I'm going to bring the word mark to the end, and I'm going to preference the light version of the logo because I like that and I want to use that more than I do the dark version of the logo. You can see here for every logo we have that there's an opportunity to add different file formats. So I might add an RGB file format, maybe a PNG or a JPEG, or I could give people that are working with this brand the opportunity to download the CMYK files as well. Maybe that's an Illustrator file or an EPS. So I can add those here if I like. The next part of our brand is colors, and you can see that we've already had a few colors which have been brought in automatically from our logos. So I'm going to start adding a few of these that I know we're going to need down the track. When we're adding our colors, we can also sort and arrange them like we can our brands. And clicking on a color reveals some of the options that we have. We can define our digital colors, and when we want to make a change, that applies across all of the values for hex, RGB, and HSL. But there's some other colors which require a little bit of judgment from a designer. So what the CMYK color or the Pantone might be that you're choosing for your brand, you can specify that here. If you want to, you can also specify some of the options for coated and uncoated finish options. That might be a nice way to give print designers who are working with your brand more specific instructions when you're talking about color. When we're happy with our color, and look, this is quite a simple brand with only a few colors, we'll go down to fonts. Now, there's a number of ways to get fonts into Guidelines. If you have purchased the license for a font, you can upload it here. Today, we're going to use a few different fonts. I'm going to use one from Google. I'm going to choose Work Sans. And I'm going to use this one here. The next font that I'm going to choose is going to be from Adobe Fonts. And to get that, I'm going to need the Adobe Project ID. So to do that, I'll add another font here, and then I'll select Adobe. Now, I also know the font name. The font is called Owners, and I'm going to save that as well. With both fonts in the system, I can now start looking at my typography styles. We've created a few for every brand to get started, which is our 3 different heading styles and a body and some fine print. But maybe I want to make a few changes. In fact, I want to use this new Owners font for my main headings. And actually, I want to make this a little bit larger, potentially control the letter spacing a little. Once I save that, you can see the preview here in my typography styles. The same goes for some of these other font families, and I might just save these typography styles as well. Now, with anything in your brand, you can always, as a designer, come back and edit and update as you go. You don't have to get everything right at once. So when you're editing your brand guidelines website and you realize that you needed to add another color, maybe a background color or an interface color, you can always come back to this branding screen even from within the editor itself. So your brand is a living document. You can decide who can have the edit and access rights to it, but brands change over time, and so this is why we've created brands with some editability. We're going to choose one of the free templates in the guidelines platform to make our set of brand guidelines. To do this, we've already started by creating a site and adding a few elements to our brand. But now, if we head to the platform, you can see that we're able to select the brand that we want to be using. We're going to select the new brand we created. It's for a brand that we've called Leap. We've added a few brand assets like a logo and some colors, and you can see on the screen that our templates are now starting to show. We can choose a 7-page set of guidelines or 1-page set of guidelines. I'm going to choose the 7-page set of guidelines to create, and Guidelines is now creating that template for me. The 1-page has all of our elements like colors, typography, fonts, and logos, of course, on the 1 page. But the 7-page guide takes a bit more time with each section and adds more content in. Now, these pages are not fixed. As soon as you create the site, you're free to add any sections you want to every page, and as many pages as you like to your site in Guidelines. But here we are in the editor using the template itself. You can see on the left-hand side we have our Pages menu. In our Pages menu, you can see the various pages that we've created from this template. We've got a page for logo, colors, typography, and photography. And then on the right-hand side, this is our editor. This is where we can start editing things on the page. So our main home page is a bit of a cover page for our guide, and you can see that we've got a bit of a contents page here. Now, as we go through in this tutorial series and publish various pages, we'll see this contents page automatically populate. But let's get a sense of how to use these templates first. I want to add some content to the page, and maybe what I want to do is add a new section. So there's many things that you can add. Guidelines works in terms of sections, like horizontal rows across the screen, and blocks, individual bits of content that you can add to a section. So we're going to look at adding a new section. When you're presented with a new section, you'll see all of the various templates that Guidelines has to offer. You'll see different templates for logos, for branding, for colors, for typeface and styles, or just regular content. So as your brand guidelines are coming together, you can use these to help form your new content sections. We can always, though, add a blank section and start from scratch. Within this new section here, we can start adding content as we like. How do I move content around the page, or how do I add different content to a page? Well, you can see that in the plus button as well. You've got many options for the content that you can add to the page. For example, you could add text, images, videos, or some of the more branded elements that we have in Guidelines. You could add a logo, a color palette, a type specimen, a preview of the fonts that you're working with, or even a clear space block, which demonstrates the clear area around your logo. Let's get started on this page and just add a logo to the page. I know we have one above, but for my particular use case, I actually want this logo a little bit larger. I've deleted the block above, so now I've got a chance to make this a little bit bigger. I'm just going to resize our heading here just so it's a little further down, and then our logo is taking up a good amount of space. Because it's a logo, it actually references the brand live. So if I click on the logo toolbar, I can see all of the different logos that I uploaded earlier to this brand. Potentially here, I might just want to use the icon instead of the logo. And I'll pull the size down a little bit, and I actually want to change the layout so that it's left aligned to the block. So I can do that here. Once you're ready with any particular page or a template, all we need to do to get started is click Publish. That will publish the site live. Now you can choose in Guidelines your publishing options, whether you want that to be available to the general public, protected with a password, or restricted on our paid plans just to people who you directly give access to. They'll need to sign in with a Guidelines account, which they can create for free. So we've published our first page, and you can see that that's published in the left-hand side. Now, editing text on a page is really simple. You can click on the text and style it and edit it as you like. So I'm actually going to call this one a brand style guide. And I'm going to give the company name here as well. That's automatically saved, and any collaborator who's working in Guidelines with you will see your updates live. Once we're ready to save our changes, we can simply click Publish. Publishing publishes this to anyone who has access to view your guides. Maybe that's people who work on your team. Now, that's editing text on the page. You can do a lot of formatting with text. So for example, we want to apply our typography styles. We can see in the top menu bar that this is the large heading. Now we can change it to any one of the typography styles that we have in Guidelines. If we have editing access, we'll also see this Manage Typography section. This allows us to change the specifics of these typography styles. Now these changes go across the board for every site that uses this brand. So be careful who you give these editing permissions to, because they will apply globally. But it's a great way for brand designers to be editing, adding, and crafting these styles as your brand guidelines come together. So let's put this back to heading large. You'll also see that there's a heading 1 indicator here. This is telling people who use screen readers or SEO search bots how your content should be interpreted. So as your page is coming together, we want one heading 1 per page, and then we want to layer down with heading 2s, heading 3s below that, heading 4s below heading 3s. So this is a way that you can keep this style, but change the actual tag for your heading. Of course, you can recolor fonts, you can recolor text, so any color that we have in our system, we're able to select here. Now you may think, why can't I choose just any color? Well, as a brand style guide, we want to make sure we're on brand. So we only give you the colors that you've actually selected for your brand. Of course, if you have the edit permissions for the brand, you can simply manage your palette here and add the colors that you need. Of course, bold and italics is there. Making links is an opportunity to link to content. You can also link to other pages within Guidelines, or you can link to an external URL. So that's the basics of editing text, but every block you'll see has the ability to change its style, its look, and its feel. So within the toolbar, every block that we select will have some options. For example, in this block, I can change the base color to turquoise, for example, or I can change it to cyan. This is currently all getting overwritten by this white text here, so I'll just remove that, and I can see what this text block is doing. If I remove that, it'll take the default color. I can add a border, I can give the border some width, I can add a background color to the section to make it stand out. So I really can use some of these tools to design the page that I want. In my layout, I've got some fine-grained control over things like alignment, padding, corner radiuses, those kinds of things. Now, I might want to remove that border because I don't think that's looking quite right. This is looking how I want it. I'll just click Publish again, and then that will go live. There's a few other things you may want to think about when editing the page, and this is up in the editing menu for the page itself. We have a title, but we also have the slug, the part of the URL which comes after that slash of your domain. You can also give it a meta description and a share image if you want. There's a few more publishing actions which we'll cover here, and that's in the bottom right-hand menu. So here you can see that we've published the page, but we may actually want to unpublish that. We can always revert to a draft. If we like, we can take the entire content from this page and click Duplicate or Delete Page if we like. Let's learn how to adjust our page layouts in Guidelines. As designers, we all love using grids, and Guidelines has built-in grids that make editing and adjusting our layouts a little bit simpler. To do this, we're going to head to any page in Guidelines, and we're going to look at how the guide is constructed. Firstly, it's simple to add and edit text. We can simply change paragraph styles as we need, but how do we change the underlying grid itself? So we can move blocks in what's called a section. A section is like a row on our page. Whether you're on desktop or mobile, sections always stack vertically down the page. And inside our toolbar, you'll see some of the options that we have for styling each section. For example, we can change the background color quite easily by using this color fill dropdown. We'll just keep it a teal for the moment. Let's take a look at some of the layout options. You can see that we've got lots of options for padding. We can control these here, or we can use the little handles here to extend and change the padding available to us. The padding here is interesting because we've actually chosen a fixed height for a section. We've said that whatever your screen size, this section should at least be 80% that high. Within that height, we can change the alignment of the content to make sure it's towards the top or towards the bottom or middle, whatever our preference is. But also we can change the grid. Now, I've added a section below here to demonstrate how that might be useful. In this, I've got a bit of a bento style layout with a number of different images. I haven't uploaded my images yet, I've just given them a background color. But again, you can see we've got a white section here. If I go into my layout and change my grid settings, you can see that the gaps between these can be adjusted. I could change this to 0 and 0 to have no space between blocks, or I could make this more generous than we currently have. So I might bring my gaps up to something like 12 pixels, 12 points. That might be a nicer way for me to display this kinds of content. You can change this per section, so you have fine-grained control over how your layout looks in each section. Now, while we're here talking about layouts, another important consideration is your mobile grid. A lot of the time, we'll just be working on desktops and seeing the widescreen version of our brand guidelines. But many people access brand guidelines when on the go or remotely, or just have different size devices. So in the bottom of our screen, near the Publish button, is our preview size. We can adjust this to small and see the mobile grid. Currently, we have 2 layout grids on guidelines, one for wide screens and one for narrow screens. And on this grid, you can see we've got a different layout. Moving things in this grid will not affect their position in the other grid, but some of the properties like background color or alignment will stay. So we want to think of a consistent layout for this. And a lot of our templates that are built in already look great on mobile. But it's always worth considering once you've finished a page and are about ready to publish, what will mobile users experience? Take a look through that and make sure that you've got a great layout for them. When we're here on our logo screen, I'll give you a look through the kind of page that we created. We're working with this brand called Leap, and you can see it's added some of the logos that we uploaded to the site. I want to show you how we can adjust these, because some of them need a little bit of adjustment, and what we might want to do with a page like this. So firstly, it's added our logos to the site, and we can now start changing how we want this to appear. If I go to the toolbar in the logo tab, I can actually change the logo that we want to use here. Now maybe I want to use an icon, or in this case, I think the style is good, but I might just want to change the background color. Might even want to give this some rounded corners to suit the look of my brand, but it's really the section below that I want to adjust. So I do want to show my icon, but I want to make that smaller. So I'll push this into the corner, and then I'll extend this inverted version of my logo over here. So this feels like a nicer layout. The same thing is true with when you're working with any of the logos in the site. You can always check the logos that you have access to, the logos that you've uploaded. And if you need to add anything else, you can always go down to Manage Logos to do that. If we click on Manage Logos, you can see all of our logos here. What we're going to do is we're just going to select the right one for this background. Now, when we've published this page, our viewers will have an opportunity to download the logo. So what I'm going to do is preview this page now, as I would anyone who's viewing this site. To do that, just next to the Publish page, I'm going to look for the Preview button. It says View Live Page. I'm going to click that. Now we're going to load this page as if we're viewing the site. We might be viewing as someone who's using your brand. Maybe that's someone in your team, an external agency. And if we scroll down here, we can see the site that it's created. If I hover over the logo, you'll notice that there's a download button. This gives me the access to preview the logo, see what colors are available in it, and even download the logo directly. Now, if I have selected some additional formats like RGB or CMYK, these will also be presented to the user, so they have the opportunity to download them as well. So let's take a look at some of the other things we can do with the logos that we've just added. We're back in the editor now. I've changed back to that tab, and I'm going to continue to scroll down. You can see that we've got some sections for icons. Potentially I want to adjust these to the icons that suit best. I might adjust some of the layouts and sizings, but I do want to talk through the clear space block. This block allows you to simply make diagrams to show people how to implement your logo, what amount of space to leave around the logo so that it's safe for other elements, say a title or a heading. Clear space diagrams have often taken me many hours to create for different brands, but you can do it simply with a block. If you want to add one to the page, you can simply click the plus button in the toolbar and then select clear space if you want to add a new diagram. I might just add this diagram below the diagram that we have here. Now with this, I'll change this to actually use the icon that we have. Now the dark version is probably better because we're on a white background, but of course I can change any of these elements here, removing the background color if I like. I can also change the size of the clear space. I could say instead of half the height, maybe I want to go down to a third of the height or a quarter of the height. And that's the amount of space that we need to leave around this logo. There's lots more settings in here for you to adjust so you can get your spacings just right. Finally, the other thing you can do with a clear space block is co-branding. A lot of these diagrams also can be difficult to make and time consuming. So what we've done is created a version of these diagrams that you can use simply. This may not be perfect for every brand, but if you're looking for a really quick start to make these kinds of diagrams, the clear space block may be a great way to go. Let's add a color palette to our brand guide on the Guidelines platform. We might have already created a brand, added a few colors, and used our free site templates to make a page. And on screen, what we'd see is the colors page, something which looks a little bit like this. What I want to show you is how to use this color palette block, how to edit it, and how you can give really useful information to the people who are working with your brand. So firstly, we've got this page which the site template has created on Guidelines. And you can see if we scroll down, it's describing our primary colors. Now we've got 4 colors in this brand, so this is perfect. We do have options for extended colors. For example, if you wanted to make a color scale for digital interfaces, for example, some of these templates can be really useful, but for our purposes, we're just going to stick to that first color palette here. So you can see in our primary colors, we have a few of these blocks called palette. Now, there's a few blocks here. Each block can have 1 or more colors. You could use one palette block to add multiple colors. For example, I could add another color here and even a third. And I can change not only the color, but the color of the text and what information is shown. I can choose to show the hex value, the RGB, HSL, or even some of the print values like CMYK and Pantone. And each of them comes with this ability for click to copy. It's a really quick way to give people who use your brand the ability to quickly click a value and copy it to the clipboard. For the moment, I'm just going to use the colors that we have here. Remember, at any time, if you want to add or extend the colors, if you have access to edit your brand, you can always click on Manage Colors to get the full palette for your brand. You can also adjust some of these values, like the CMYK and Pantone colors that you might have created earlier or might need to adjust now. Once this is created, we can click Publish. With a published page, we can see what the experience is like for someone viewing your site. Anyone that's using one of these color palettes will not just see what you've created on screen, but also have this option to copy these values. That'll copy straight to their clipboard. The other really neat way that we can provide people with color information is through search. If people click on the search, they're not only able to search text or the pages or the information that you put on the page, but also the colors directly. So here, for example, if they click on teal, we'll see all of those same properties. And there's even a neat accessibility tool built in where you can test the accessibility to those AA standards of any color pairing. So you can see whether these 2 colors, for example, shouldn't be used together for a good contrast, or these 2 colors should. All of those are by default for free within your brand guidelines site, and anytime you add a color, all of this stays automatically updated. Let's add fonts and typography styles to our pages in Guidelines. You might have already added your brand and added some fonts to your brand in Guidelines. And in this tutorial, what we're going to do is look at the typography page. This is straight from the template, but you could create one from scratch if you wanted to use blank sections and add blocks. And within this section, we're going to be looking at typography styles and specifically showing fonts on the page. Now, you might have already realized that we can use this typography style selector in the top toolbar to change the size of text on a page. We can also, once we've selected that, manage the typography styles in our brand at any time. This lets us choose different styles. But I want to show you a few different blocks that we might build out a typography page with in your brand guide. Firstly, we might want to introduce the fonts. So this is a nice way to talk about what individual fonts we can use and how to access them. And we might have a specimen here. This is the typography block, which allows us to demonstrate or show off that particular font. Here, if I click in the toolbar, I can actually see that the label is referring to the font name, but it could just as easily be the name of the typography style that we've selected. We can also choose what specimen to show. I'm showing heading medium here, but because I want to show this font off, I may as well use heading large. You could even create a different type style to use as a specimen. We can choose between showing the full Latin character set or just some sample text we have, or we can type something custom, really specific to our brand. Of course, if we need to change the color of the type, we can do that here as well. If we scroll down the page, you can see that we're using the same typography style to put different characters on the page. For example, here's a specimen using just title case with that same font that we've got. Or down here, we're looking at some of the specific typography styles. So this might be in your large heading, how big is the font, what's the style. Now, if anyone's browsing your site and they take a look through the typography styles, they can get access to this information as well through search. So let's take a look. If we click on View Live Page, we'll be taken to the typography page as your viewers might see it. And yes, while we can look at the styles here, we also have access to it in search. In search, we can go down to typography and select any one of these type styles and see how it's put together. What's the heading size, what's the line height, what's the kerning. So we can see those values for leading, kerning, everything we might need. And there's even a handy copy CSS button if people are looking to build websites or digital interfaces. Let's add some photos and videos to our page on the Guidelines platform. To do this, we're going to navigate to our site and open up any page. For me, I'm going to be working with a page that we've created in our site template. Now, you could do this in any section, but for me, I'm working on the applications page and I'm seeing some of the examples that we've got in our theme. So I've got a few images that I want to upload here for this section specifically. I want to add some of the examples of our brand in use, and I have images for that. Now, I could simply add an image to the page by clicking the plus in the toolbar and selecting an image. Or I can simply select one of the existing placeholders and replace the image by clicking the Image tab in the toolbar here. I'm going to upload an image from our site, and for this one, I want to use the app icon. That seems like a good place to work. I might also add just a couple more images from the mockups that we've already created. All of these are digital mockups, so they go well within this section. So the final image that I want to upload here, I'll just upload. This is our app preview. Now, with any image on the screen, we have a few options for how these are laid out. If I look at my image and go to the Layout tab, you'll see that I'm using what's called cover. This means the image is filling all of the available space. But I may want to choose a different style. I may want to choose full width or contain. Contain would mean all of the image will be visible at all times. Cover is great for me though, because I know that it's going to stretch to the grid, and I've got a lot of padding around these images, which is not critical information. What I do want to do though is change the way that this information looks on the page. So I'm going to start moving some of these elements around. And just like every block in Guidelines, I can extend them, change them, scroll, until I get a layout that I'm kind of happy with. So for me, I want to gather these background images together and potentially move this all up the page a little. That's looking a little better. I might need some design guidance on this one, but at least I've got my images on the page. If I wanted to add a video, it's a similar process. I can click on the plus button in the toolbar and then select video. From there, I've got the options to move it around the page, but also to supply the video itself. I can upload an MP4 file directly, or I can paste a link in. There might be a Vimeo link, a Zoom link, or something from Loom or YouTube. Those will resolve and get converted so that you're loading your content directly from where you need it. One of the best things you can do for people who use your brand is to make it easy for them to navigate in Guidelines. And we've tried to make it as easy as possible to set this up in your brand guide. When you're on any page of the editor, in the top left-hand corner, you'll see next to Pages, the navigation menu. In this navigation menu, you've got a few options for how people can access your site. First off is the sidebar. This is a menu which can be on the left or right and serves also as your mobile menu when people are viewing your site on a mobile phone. So on small screens, this is full width, and on large screens, this can either be an overlay or can permanently exist on the left or right-hand side when the screen is wide enough. So you can choose these options here. You can also edit the full layout just as you would a page on guidelines on the right-hand side. This one's looking good for me, so I'm going to lock that in here. Now there's other options we can configure. There's also a floating menu. This appears on mobile by default, and when the screen is too small to show your full menu, this menu appears alongside your site. It follows users down the page, so you've got the option to link to the menu or search. You can also configure the items that you have access to here. I might want to hide the logo, for example, or hide the search interface and just link to the menu. The choice is up to you. Finally, in the footer section, we provide some options for how to navigate between pages. So, for example, on most guidelines sites, you might want to navigate to the previous and next page in the footer. But you also have the option for adding infinite scroll, so that people navigate from one page straight to the next as they go through your site and guidelines. These are just a few of the ways that we give to help you add a navigation to your guidelines interface. But there's one more critical element you can add to help your guidelines be more navigable, and that's menus. So in any guidelines page, you can add a menu. These menus can link to other pages or even sections within the page. This is through the menu block. You can add a menu block to every page by, in the title, in the toolbar, clicking on the plus button, and then selecting Menu. Once you've added a menu, in the toolbar, you'll see options for linking to pages on the site or the headings on the current page. You can choose which headings to show, and you can, of course, style each of these to suit your brand. Once you've created your brand on the Guidelines platform, the next step is to share it with your team. You can share this with people who are within your company or people who work with your brand on a daily basis. To do this, we're going to head to the editor within Guidelines. On any page in the editor, in the bottom left-hand side, you'll see Site Settings. In Site Settings, we have a number of different options. We can change the name that's displayed on the site title, the description, if we want this to be indexed by search engines, but critically, we'll also be able to see the domain that we use to share this site. This is our primary domain. This is the domain that you can share with others, and it's the same domain that you're using when you press the View Live Preview button. We can also add in our analytics here if we like, or we can choose who can access this site. Now, anyone on the free plan has access to publish this publicly, so anyone with a domain can visit your website. But you may want to restrict access for various reasons. You can do this in two ways. You can use password protection, which lets you set a password on the page, or you can restrict it to people with a Guidelines account. Anyone can create a Guidelines account for free, and you can determine which of these people has access to your site. You can add and manage all of these people in your team settings. You can even, if you're in a large organization, set up a domain grant, which makes it easy for anyone with the same email who works at the same company to automatically get access to your brand guidelines, so you don't have to add them one by one. This is available in our enterprise plans. So if you'd like to talk more about guidelines, we're always here to help. Let us know what we should be building next. Thanks so much.